There's a force more destructive than greed, cruelty, or even evil itself. It shapes nations, destroys empires, and decides who rises and who falls. It's not war, not disease. It's human stupidity, a quiet, invisible hand guiding chaos through every age of history. And the most chilling part, you see it every day, in leaders, in crowds, even in yourself. Machiavelli, the man known for his brutal honesty about human nature, understood this dark truth centuries ago. He saw stupidity not as a flaw, but as a weapon used by the powerful, and a weakness exploited by those who understood its nature. In his world, stupidity wasn't an accident. It was a tool of control. And if you've ever wondered why the world rewards the loudest over the wisest, or why common sense dies in groups, this video will show you the answer through Machiavelli's eyes. Before we begin, imagine this: a kingdom on the edge of collapse. The king believes he's wise, guided by loyalty and faith, but his court is filled with fools, obedient, confident, loud. Each believes they know best, and each decision they make digs the grave a little deeper. Machiavelli would call this not tragedy, but inevitability. Because in his view, stupidity always rises faster than intelligence. It spreads easier, destroys deeper, and hides behind the mask of virtue. Throughout history, the stupid have ruled the clever, not because they were smarter, but because they were simpler. They acted without hesitation, while the wise hesitated to act. Machiavelli saw this pattern again and again, the reckless gaining ground while the thoughtful were silenced. He wrote that men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities that one who deceives will always find those willing to be deceived. This is the foundation of his darkest theory, that power doesn't belong to the intelligent. It belongs to those who understand how stupidity works. In this video, we'll uncover 10 ruthless truths about human stupidity, truths that philosophers feared to say out loud, and rulers used to manipulate entire nations. You'll see why the most dangerous person isn't the villain who plots, but the fool who obeys. You'll understand why stupidity is not tied to IQ, education, or wealth, and why it thrives even in the most advanced societies. You'll see how it's rewarded, multiplied, and weaponized, not just in politics but in our daily lives. By the end, you'll see the world differently. You'll see why stupidity is not just harmless ignorance, it's an active force, one that drains intelligence, punishes reason, and fuels the rise of manipulators. You'll understand Machiavelli's unspoken warning that intelligence alone doesn't guarantee survival. Awareness does. And only those who can recognize stupidity in others and in themselves can truly escape its control. So stay until the end, because each truth we reveal will bring you closer to understanding how the world really works, and how easily reason can be destroyed by foolishness. What you're about to learn isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Welcome to Psych algorithm, where we decode the human mind through the world's darkest ideas and timeless truths. If you crave clarity in a world ruled by confusion, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button, because what we uncover today might just change the way you see people, power, and yourself. Before we talk about the 10 ruthless truths, we need to step into the mind of the man who saw human nature without filters. Niccolò Machiavelli. He wasn't just a political thinker. He was an observer of weakness, ambition, and the strange logic that governs power. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, he watched kings and soldiers, priests and merchants, all pretending to be wise, yet driven by their own blind spots. To Machiavelli, power wasn't earned through morality or reason. It was seized through understanding the flaws of others, and the most useful flaw of all was stupidity. Machiavelli believed that human beings are not naturally wise or good. They are creatures of impulse, easily deceived, easily flattered, and often unaware of their own limitations. He saw manipulation not as evil, but as survival. To him, the world was a chessboard, where most people didn't even know the rules. And in that ignorance, in that confident foolishness, lay the greatest opportunity for those who did. This was his dark lens, to see stupidity not as something laughable, but as the silent engine of politics, war, and society. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't teaching rulers how to be cruel for pleasure. He was teaching them how to win in a world ruled by blind emotion and irrational people. He knew that rarely guides decisions. It's the fear, the pride, the blind loyalty, and yes, the stupidity that truly move the masses. He wrote that men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and covetous, and that any ruler who ignores this will be destroyed by it. To survive, one must not just understand intelligence, but stupidity itself. But what exactly did he mean by stupidity? Not lack of education, not ignorance of facts. To Machiavelli, stupidity was a failure of awareness, the inability to see the cause and consequence of one's own actions. It was believing the illusion over the truth, following emotion over logic, obeying power without question. This kind of stupidity had weight. It could elect leaders, start wars, and collapse empires. It could make 1,000 men follow one fool into disaster, and it still does today. Machiavelli saw that the powerful didn't always need intelligence to rule. They just needed to control those who lacked it. The real art of power wasn't about wisdom. It was about influence. It was about turning the blind spots of others into weapons. He knew that people wanted comfort more than clarity, and that made them predictable. The prince who could read that weakness could control it. And that's what makes Machiavelli's view so disturbing. It wasn't cynicism, it was realism. Through his eyes, stupidity becomes more than a mistake. It becomes a force, one that can be directed, multiplied, and used. And when it's used by the clever, it becomes the foundation of manipulation and ultim. Machiavelli didn't invent this system, he just revealed it. And once you see it through his lens, it's impossible to unsee how stupidity shapes every corner of human power. Before we explore how stupidity rules the modern world, we must face its first and most uncomfortable truth. It's everywhere. Stupidity isn't a rare flaw in humanity. It's the default setting of most people. The Italian historian Carlo Cipolla once said that everyone underestimates how many stupid individuals exist. Machiavelli would agree. In his world, stupidity was the quiet majority, the invisible hand that decided who rose and who fell. You might believe it's easy to spot stupidity in others, but that illusion is part of the problem. The truly stupid don't look foolish. They blend in, smile politely, hold respectable jobs, and sometimes even make the decisions that shape nations. They are not hiding. They are simply unnoticed, because their numbers are so vast. To Machiavelli, this was the first rule of human error. Never assume intelligence is common. He spent his life observing politicians, generals and priests, men of high education and noble titles. Yet their actions often betrayed astonishing foolishness. They made decisions not out of logic, but emotion, pride, fear, envy, arrogance, all of which cloud judgment and disguise stupidity as strength. And that's what makes it so dangerous. You can defend yourself against evil, because evil has intent, but you cannot predict stupidity, because it acts without purpose and without reason. In every empire, in every government, stupidity multiplies silently. It spreads through trust, habit, and imitation. You might see it when a crowd cheers for empty slogans, or when leaders repeat disastrous policies, because that's how it's always been done. It's not an accident. It's the pattern of history. Machiavelli knew that the wise often stand alone, surrounded by a sea of foolishness, their voices drowned out by noise. The world doesn't punish stupidity, it promotes it. And the moment you think you're immune, you become its next victim. Now let's go deeper. The second truth, stupidity knows no class, no status, no rank. It lives in the rich and the poor, in kings and servants, in scholars and illiterates. Education may sharpen the mind, but it doesn't cure blindness. Machiavelli saw that intelligence and stupidity are not opposites. They coexist inside every person. The court of Florence was filled with men who could recite philosophy, yet made decisions that doomed armies. They could quote ancient wisdom but failed to read the moment before them. Their diplomas became armor against self-awareness. It's easy to believe that power and wealth produce wisdom. But Machiavelli's dark observation was that intelligence doesn't rise with position. Arrogance does. The higher people climb, the more they mistake authority for intelligence. They stop questioning themselves. They start believing they cannot be wrong. That's when stupidity hardens into something far worse. Delusion. When the powerful fall victim to this blindness, their errors ripple through entire nations. Their ignorance becomes law, and their arrogance becomes destiny. The third truth cuts even deeper. Stupidity is destructive beyond measure. A foolish act harms not just the fool, but everyone around them. It creates collateral chaos. A single stupid decision can burn through decades of careful work. What makes it terrifying is that the stupid often don't mean harm. They simply can't see it. They believe they're right, that they're helping, that their impulse is noble. But as Machiavelli knew, good intentions without clarity are just another weapon of destruction. A fool may ruin a kingdom, not out of malice, but out of confidence. To Machiavelli, such people were perfect tools for manipulation. A clever ruler didn't need to command evil men. He needed to guide stupid ones. They were easier to control, easier to flatter, and easier to blame. When chaos erupted, they became the scapegoats. Their lack of awareness made them both dangerous and disposable. The irony is cruel. Stupidity harms others and itself at the same time. No one wins. The fool burns down the house while standing inside it. Now we reach the fourth truth. We always underestimate how powerful stupidity truly is. Most intelligent people assume they can outthink or outmaneuver it. They treat it as harmless, a joke, a minor irritation. Machiavelli would call that fatal optimism. Stupidity is underestimated precisely because it wears a friendly face. It looks harmless, until it isn't. When fools gather, their confidence becomes contagious. When their voices multiply, logic retreats. Societies fall not because they lack resources or strength, but because they let stupidity make decisions unchecked. In politics, it hides behind slogans. In corporations, it hides behind hierarchy. In social groups, it hides behind conformity. And in each form, it spreads silently. The intelligent think they can control it, that it's beneath them. But Machiavelli would warn, the fool you ignore today will be the one signing your fate tomorrow. Fifth truth. Systems often reward stupidity over depth. Modern societies are built on speed, emotion, and visibility, not reflection. The loudest voice, not the wisest, commands attention. Machiavelli would not be surprised. He believed that people prefer simple lies to complex truths. A prince who offers certainty, even false certainty, will gain loyalty faster than one who admits doubt. The world rewards clarity of tone, not clarity of thought. Look around. In politics, entertainment, even business, success often belongs to those who speak with absolute confidence. No matter how hollow their words are. The clever spend time thinking, hesitating, questioning, while the fool acts. And action, no matter how misguided, creates momentum. Systems built on appearances naturally promote those who can appear sure of themselves, even when they are blind. In Machiavellian terms, stupidity becomes strategy, because simplicity persuades better than truth. The sixth truth reveals the engine behind it all. Confidence masks incompetence. The fool's greatest weapon is self-assurance. Those who know the least often believe they know the most. The wise doubt themselves. Stupid broadcast certainty. It's the perfect imbalance. Machiavelli, ever the strategist, would use such people as instruments of persuasion. Their confidence is contagious. People follow them, admire them, and confuse their arrogance with leadership. History is filled with such figures, men who marched proudly into ruin while the wise stood silent. Machiavelli understood this dynamic well. He knew that a clever ruler could surround himself with confident fools to project intent while keeping real thinkers hidden in the shadows. The people would rally behind the loud ones, never realizing who truly held the strings. Confidence without competence becomes spectacle, and spectacle is power. If we step back and connect these truths, a grim pattern emerges. Stupidity is not an exception to intelligence. It's the dominant force of human behavior. It's not limited by class or education. It doesn't need intent to cause destruction. It thrives because we underestimate it. It's rewarded by the very systems that claim to value wisdom, and it disguises itself as confidence, charisma, and certainty. Machiavelli would see stupidity not as a failure of the few, but as the natural condition of the many. It's the soil in which manipulation grows. The wise survive not by eliminating it, but by learning to navigate it. They must predict the fool's reaction, anticipate the crowd's blindness, and use both to their advantage. For Machiavelli, the stupid were not enemies. They were raw material. The ones who could not think clearly could always be led, directed, and sacrificed. This is the brutal genius of his insight. He didn't despise stupidity. He exploited it. He saw that the world could be ruled by those who understood the limits of human reason. That's why his muses remain relevant even today. In every age, the same patterns repeat. People trust confidence over truth, simplicity over complexity, emotion over reason. And as long as that remains true, stupidity will always have the upper hand. You might think intelligence should win, that reason should guide progress. But Machiavelli would shake his head. Intelligence hesitates. It questions, doubts, calculates. Stupidity charges forward. And in a world ruled by perception and speed, hesitation is weakness. The fools act while the wise are still thinking. The result: the stupid dominate, not by merit, but by momentum. So when you look around and wonder why the loudest, most reckless voices rise to the top, remember these truths. They are not accidents. They are the natural outcome of how human nature operates. Machiavelli warned that power belongs not to the smartest, but to those who understand the stupid. How they think, what they fear, what they follow. Those who can read stupidity can rule it. Those who cannot will be ruled by it. These 6 truths are only the beginning. They show how stupidity shapes every structure of society, how it hides, spreads, and takes command. But there are darker truths still, about how stupidity multiplies, how it disguises itself as morality, and then it becomes the perfect instrument of power. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. There is a strange thing about stupidity. It doesn't stay still. It spreads. It seeps from one person to another, like smoke filling a room. This is the 7th truth. Stupidity is contagious. One foolish action rarely ends with one fool. It pulls others in, lowering the standard of thought, until the entire group begins to echo the same blindness. Machiavelli would see this as one of the greatest threats to any society or state, because once stupidity becomes collective, it transforms from weakness into culture. In groups, reason weakens. People stop thinking as individuals and start mirroring each other. They surrender judgment for belonging. A foolish idea repeated enough times starts to sound like wisdom. This is how stupidity multiplies. It doesn't need proof. It needs followers. A crowd doesn't need logic to move. It needs emotion. And the first fool to act boldly gives permission for others to do the same. Machiavelli observed this in the politics of Florence. How one irrational decision could ripple outward, infecting everyone around it, until the entire court acted against its own interest. The contagion of stupidity has always been stronger than the influence of reason. That's because stupidity offers comfort. It tells people what they want to hear. It removes the burden of thinking. It whispers, "Follow me, I'll save you from complexity." Machiavelli would call this the psychology of obedience. When stupidity becomes the norm, intelligence becomes rebellion. To think independently feels dangerous. To question feels disloyal. And so collective foolishness hardens into dogma. This brings us to the eighth truth. Moral goodness, in a world ruled by stupidity, becomes a disadvantage. Machiavelli knew that morality and power rarely coexist peacefully. The virtuous, the cautious, the genuinely good, they play by rules that fools do not recognize. In a ruthless arena, morality is a form of restraint. The Machiavellian prince could never afford to be purely good, because goodness limits what he can do. Meanwhile, stupidity, being unbound by principle, moves faster, hits harder, and spreads further. Think about it. The moral man stops to consider the consequences. The stupid man acts without hesitation. The moral man reflects before he speaks. The fool shouts and wins the crowd. The moral man hesitates to do. The fool lies with ease. In the competition for influence, the reckless outpace the righteous. Machiavelli didn't celebrate this truth, but he acknowledged it. In a world dominated by perception, ruthlessness often outperforms virtue. He warned that goodness alone is dangerous, because the world does not reward purity, it exploits it. The cautious thinker becomes prey for those who are shameless. The good are restrained by conscience, while the stupid are liberated by ignorance. This imbalance shifts the flow of power. Those who act without reflection, without guilt, appear strong. Those who pause to do what's right appear weak. Thus, stupidity and ruthlessness form an alliance that dominates over moral restraint. Yet even this alliance has a hidden layer. Stupidity doesn't only win through aggression, it also wins through obedience. That is the ninth truth. Stupidity hides in obedience. Machiavelli knew that every ruler, every system, every empire needs its obedient followers. The ones who execute orders without question. These are the useful idiots of four. The loyal servants who believe they are doing good while advancing agendas they do not understand. In every institution, political, religious, or corporate, obedience is praised as loyalty, but loyalty without thought becomes a form of stupidity. When obedience replaces awareness, corruption thrives. Machiavelli observed that rulers prefer compliant minds because they are predictable. The obedient man won't challenge authority. He will defend it. He won't think. He will execute. He won't question the morality of his command. He will trust that someone else has already done so. Power structures rely on this pattern. They reward obedience, not intelligence, because intelligence questions. A smart subordinate is a threat. A loyal fool is an asset. That's why those who rise within systems are often not the best thinkers, but the most obedient executors. They follow orders, repeat slogans, and punish those who dissent. This is how stupidity disguises itself, not as failure, but as discipline. Machiavelli would see this as the perfect form of control, when people willingly act against their own reason, believing it is virtue. And that brings us to the 10th truth, perhaps the most dangerous of them all. Ignoring stupidity is fatal. Most people believe that stupidity is someone else's problem. They treat it like background noise, not realizing that it shapes the very systems they live in. Machiavelli would warn that ignorance of stupidity is the first step toward defeat, because stupidity, when ignored, doesn't disappear. It multiplies. The clever often underestimate the fool, thinking intelligence will naturally prevail. But stupidity doesn't follow logic. It doesn't play fair. It doesn't care about consistency or truth. It simply exists, moves and consumes. History is filled with moments when great thinkers, leaders, or civilizations fell not because they were outsmarted, but because they underestimated the power of collective foolishness. Machiavelli would argue that a wise man must never look down on stupidity. He must study it, anticipate it, and prepare for it. To ignore it is to invite disaster. When stupidity goes unchecked, it becomes policy. When it's rewarded, it becomes culture. When it's celebrated, it becomes identity. And by the time the intelligent notice, it's already too late. The fools are in charge, and the system serves their illusions. That is how empires collapse from within. Not by invasion, but by the slow erosion of reason. At this point, it's clear that stupidity is not harmless. It shapes nations, politics, and society at every level. It creeps into leadership, corrodes institutions, and blinds individuals who believe they are immune. Machiavelli would see it as the true enemy of order. Not because it intends chaos, but because it creates it effortlessly. The wise might see the signs and think they can resist, but awareness alone is not enough. You must recognize how stupidity operates, and how it manipulates the human desire for certainty, comfort, and belonging. It flatters the ego, offering the illusion of understanding without the effort of thought. It thrives in environments where people fear being wrong more than being foolish. It rewards obedience, punishes curiosity, and disguises conformity as wisdom. To resist its grip, you must do what most people will not. Demand clarity. Question every absolute. Doubt those who promise simplicity in a complex world. Value nuance, because truth is rarely one-dimensional. Look beyond words and focus on actions. Stupidity often speaks in slogans, but acts in contradictions. Cultivate independence of thought, even when it isolates you. And most importantly, beware of flattery and blind obedience, because that's where stupidity hides best, wrapped in loyalty, waiting to be used. Machiavelli would not ask you to destroy stupidity. That's impossible. He would ask you to understand it, to study its nature the way a general studies his enemy. Because the fool, once understood, becomes predictable. And predictability is power. The wise who learn to navigate stupidity can survive it, even use it, while those who ignore it are swallowed whole. The truth is, stupidity will always exist. It is built into the machinery of human nature. But awareness, true, sharp awareness, is the only weapon that weakens its influence. For Machiavelli, that awareness was the beginning of mastery. The wise do not complain about the foolish. They observe them, they learn from them, and they never underestimate them. Because in the end, it's not intelligence that ensures survival. It's the ability to see clearly in a world that celebrates blindness. So now we arrive at the final reckoning, the end of our journey through these 10 ruthless truths about human stupidity. Each truth, as harsh as it may seem, exposes something Machiavelli understood long before the modern world caught up. That stupidity is not just a personal flaw. It's a political force, a social weapon, and a tool of control. It operates silently, shaping empires, corrupting leadership, and determining who rises and who falls. To ignore it is to surrender to it. To understand it is to begin reclaiming power. Think about what we have uncovered. Stupidity is more common than we believe. It doesn't care about wealth, education, or class. It cuts through all layers of society. It destroys more than it creates, and yet it often goes unpunished. It spreads like infection, cloaked in confidence and obedience, feeding systems that reward simplicity and punish depth. And the most dangerous part, it thrives in silence, in the space where we stop questioning, stop thinking, and start following. Machiavelli would look at our modern world and see the same forces he warned against centuries ago. He would say that stupidity has evolved. It wears new masks now. It hides behind influence, behind charisma, behind the loud certainty of those who don't understand the weight of their words. He would tell you that power doesn't just punish ignorance, it weaponizes it. Leaders, rulers, and manipulators have always known that controlling the foolish is easier than convincing the wise. A confused crowd is easier to rule than an enlightened one. And so the game continues. The few who understand how stupidity works use it as a ladder, while the many sink deeper into its illusion. But you, the listener, have a choice. You've seen through the surface now. You've heard what most people refuse to face. The question is, will you recognize stupidity when it hides in the crowd, in your workplace, in politics, even in yourself? Will you see how it infects conversations, how it spreads through blind obedience and moral complacency? Or will you allow it to pull you into the same fog that blinds everyone else? Machiavelli would say that vigilance is the only armor left for the wise. So, don't be fooled. Don't be a tool. Stay vigilant. Question what feels too easy. Doubt what sounds too perfect. Think before you echo what others say. True intelligence is not about knowing everything. It's about refusing to follow stupidity when it wears the mask of truth. Every era has its fools and its thinkers. The fools make the noise. The thinkers make the difference. Decide which side of history you want to stand on. Because in a world that rewards ignorance, awareness becomes benign, and rebellion is where real power begins. If this journey opened your eyes, even a little, then carry it forward. Reflect on these truths in your own world, in your choices, your habits, your beliefs. The next time you see stupidity celebrated as strength, remember what you've learned here. It is not harmless. It is not random. It is the fuel that drives manipulation and decay. But it can be resisted through awareness, through discipline, through clarity. And this is just the beginning. In the next video, we'll go even deeper into the psychology of power, exploring how intelligence, cunning, and control shape the balance between leaders and followers in ways most people notice. If you want to understand how to see through the illusions of power, make sure you don't miss it. Like this video, if it made you think differently. Share it if you believe more people need to wake up to these truths. And subscribe to our channel for more deep, faceless explorations of human nature, awe, and strategy. Through the timeless, brutal wisdom of Machiavelli. Stay sharp, stay aware, because in a world ruled by illusion, clarity is your greatest weapon.